Thank you for being here today. I want to, if we could, first of all, welcome Chad Holliday with me and appreciate you being here today and taking the time, if you would, to share with us. And today is intended to be informal, although we kind of look sort of formal sitting up here. But I wanted to, if we could, set a couple of ground rules as far as questions, because I know many of you will have questions. I'm going to go through some sort of informal questions, if I could, sort of draw out some themes, if we will, about Chad and his personal life and career, and maybe some ideas for us to talk about. And that will probably generate some questions from you. And if you would, I would ask that you ask one-part questions with a one-question follow-up. That may lead to some more discussion. It doesn't mean you can't ask more than that. But sometimes as a speaker, when you've got five-part questions, it's kind of hard to remember all those things that were asked. So if we could follow that format. I would also ask that as you ask a question, if you would introduce yourself, state your name and what year you are in school, and any other pertinent information, maybe a resume you can hand Chad at the same time, whatever. But seriously, if you would take the time to introduce yourself. So I'm going to lead us off a little bit. First of all, Chad, thank you for being here today, and appreciate you being at Owen and taking the amount of time that you take here with us. It means a lot. I get a lot of questions about you from a lot of different sources, so you're making a name for yourself here. If I could start off with, you took an early job right out of school with DuPont, in the engineering background. Talk about your first job, if you would, a little bit. What was it?
Oh, so I started, here in Nashville as an engineer in the plant, and my job was to make that part of the plant more efficient, effective. We were making a Dacron, product. It's a chemical process to do that. I had no intent to kind of stay with DuPont for a long period of time, or any big company, because I thought it would be very constraining. So my best friend and I had a deal. I was going to work for DuPont 5 years. He was going to work for GE 5 years. And we were going to come back and start this company that we had as a project. I failed on my end.
So did he stay with GE?
No, he started the company. Yeah,
okay.
It worked.
Okay.
He did real well.
I think you did all right somehow along the line. Talk about your initial aspirations. You were going to stay there 5 years, maybe start a company. Did you have some idea of what you wanted to do while you were at DuPont? Was there a specific reason you went there, or?
Yeah, not really. I think probably aspirations were nothing close to what I was lucky enough to achieve. I saw the guy that was the head of this engineering group I had. He was this nice, stately guy, had a nice office, had a couch in his office. I'd never seen a couch. Boy, if I could get that, before I retired, that would be great. So I think it's pretty hard to know exactly what your aspirations are starting out. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's just a matter of kind of learn from every job and what you're doing, as opposed to a specific thing.
You remember your first promotion, what that was, too?
Oh, gosh. I remember no, but I had started here, and I'd been working 3 months, and they brought us all into a conference room, kind of like the conference room we're in now. In this group we're in, probably 40 of us, and they announced they were going to shut down a big part of the plant, and 100 exempt people were going to lose their jobs. And the meeting was over, and so I said, I'm the shortest surface exempt person on this site. This is probably not very good news today. And so I remember I went to my supervisor and I said, does this mean I need to go find a job? Because I just was interviewing. I had some jobs before. I took this thing 3 months ago. I want to go back and start again. He said, I don't think so. I said, I can't deal with I don't think so. And so it worked out. So there was a number of shocks along the way. Mm-hmm. What happened? And
then eventually promoted to, what's your first job where you're managing people or having some responsibility, P&L responsibility?
Yeah, so I think this would be kind of advice I'd share with you. It would be after being an engineer for about 2 years, I went out to be a frontline supervisor, and the chemical plants run 24/7, so it's a shift work. And so I think that was probably the most valuable experience of my life. Even today, I think back about experiences during the 3 years I was on shifts managing people, the real world experiences people were dealing with, because that's the most difficult group of people to motivate and take in a direction, because they're looking at different things than maybe exempt people who are thinking about a career differently. Mm-hmm. So I learned an awful lot from them. It's very valuable.
So what are some of the things you learned from working in that kind of position?
Oh, people can do so much more than they're challenged to do by their job description. And so, I find as a frontline supervisor, I had 3 people that I thought, because sometimes we moved out engineers or professional people to be these jobs, and we promoted from within. So I had 3 people that I thought were all capable of that. And I actually assigned each one of them a book to read and write a report on it, which was a bit unusual. And so I would, kind of divvy up, give them different, and they all 3, they all 3 didn't become frontline supervisors. They all 3 made major progressions, though. And I found by using them to help me with the rest of the team, it made a big difference. And we decided we would put out a newsletter every night. We would come in, and mainly personal about so-and-so, health issue, family issue. But our little newsletters were pretty popular. And all those things were, I'm sure, nowhere in the DuPont playbook did they say do that. We just did it until somebody told us we couldn't do it anymore. So.
Was there a DuPont playbook? Was there something that told you how to perform this job or manage people or lead?
Yeah, there was a 2-week training course for a frontline supervisor that told you all the basic stuff. I'll never forget, I was in the course, and it was a time that professional unions were becoming popular out in the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And they said, what questions do you have? I said, well, what are you doing to make sure we don't have a professional union here at DuPont? It was just an honest question. Well, that was not a good question to ask, because throughout the rest of the day I was talking to higher and higher levels of management on why I wanted to start a union for engineers. And so I learned you got to pick your questions carefully.
You obviously are a very personal individual as I watch you work in life. What is your management style or leadership style? What did you learn about yourself as you went through this process that you were talking about early in your career?
I think you need to really rely on others, reinforce them. There's no limit to what you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. So I think it really is a team environment and working with other people, and very simple stuff of telling people you appreciate what they did. So many times we forget to say thank you. Right. Very, very simple things, but how important it is. We get so focused on it's the money and so forth, and I don't think that's quite it.
So how do you motivate people if it's not about the money? What do you use what are the carrots and sticks you use?
I think people stay with an organization because they're getting development, mm-hmm. and they like the people they come to work with. When DuPont moved into Singapore, we found we could not differentiate any of our benefit plans. The government wouldn't let us do it. And at first we said, this is terrible, we can't differentiate and so forth. Then when we looked at it, it means we have to provide a great place to work, our supervisors have to be very good, we have to provide better development than the next company does. And we said, this is probably the right way to do it in the first place. Mm-hmm. So we kind of learned from that and moved it across the world. So I think if you're growing and developing and you're being treated with dignity and respect and being challenged, being given new, more interesting jobs, and you're treated as a professional part of the organization, no matter what your job is, I think that's critical. When I was at Charleston, South Carolina, we had a plant there, and my supervisor was the first big manufacturing role I had, maybe 1,000 people. And the plant manager said, I will come see you once a week. I'll come out to your office, and I only want to talk about development of the frontline people, which were the operators in the plant. And we'll talk about that for an hour, and that's the only time I want to see you. And I heard that, and I said, yeah, that's until the first thing goes wrong. Well, we were there for 3 years. And I had to see him for the routine meetings, but that's the only time I ever saw him one-on-one. He would do it every week, and we would sit there with the frontline supervisor talking about how we're going to motivate Joe or Mary, and sometimes they've been with us 2 weeks because it was a fast-growing plant. Right. And are they a good team player? What do they need to be a success? And it's amazing when you focus on that. We also had the best performance. All these other performance parameters you normally measure, right. We beat all of our competition. So I really think there is something to that.
You raised Singapore as a question. We talked about your early days as a young engineer, then some manufacturing responsibility, shift supervisor, and then South Carolina plant. When did you first take an international assignment, and how did that come about?
Well, it was in the, I guess, mid-'80s.
You had been with the company how long at that time?
I've been with the company 15 years, something like that. And they started talking about the need for international assignment, and I thought that was going to be Geneva, Switzerland, in the part that it's French speaking there. Mm-hmm. So our older son, I said, you need to take French, son, because we're going to go to Geneva. So when I came home and said, we're going to Japan, he said, can I drop this French class now? That was the first. But the going to Asia was a big shock, but taking an international assignment was something that my wife Anna and I really wanted to do. And I think it was really good for the family, and it's a super experience. We go back.
Do you
tomorrow.
volunteer for that, or somebody pick you out for that? Did you let it be known that you would take that kind of assignment? If it was
I let it be known. But I think people probably see those things as a lot more formal and organized than they really are. Mm-hmm. I after they told me, hey, we really want you to think about going to Japan, I was kind of shocked. But then I had this rationale as to why they picked me to do that, because I'd been there several times and negotiated a couple of joint ventures and built a plant there. And I said, oh, that's pretty logical. Now I look at it. The people that were actually interviewing for the job didn't even know I had done those things, So it was not that as organized as you might think. Yeah. So sometimes you just got to take the opportunity that comes up.
Yeah, I remember my first international assignment. I got the news by my boss telling me my paycheck was going to show up in this distant location, and if I wanted to be with my paycheck and receive it, I ought to show up there.
What was your answer, Jeff?
Yes, sir. And I'll be right there. I wanted that. You talked about, so as you took an international assignment, was it the first one Japan, mm-hmm. and you started out as what? You were a vice president or something? Is that
I had
right?
responsibility for DuPont in Asia Pacific, so 14 countries.
Okay.
And so I was I'm not sure, was he senior vice president or something? Yeah, but I was president of DuPont Asia Pacific.
Okay. And so did that change your perspective in any way as you got there and started doing business in this different locale and watching how that worked? How did that affect you as far as a manager?
Yeah, you found very quickly that the people back at corporate headquarters couldn't help very much, because they really didn't know the issues you were dealing with, and they were 7,000 miles away on a different time zone. So you realized you were really on your own, and the really tough decisions you kind of had to make. And so you grow very fast, and you find when you can't speak the language in any of the countries I was moving, including Australia, I couldn't speak that language either. Yeah, you really had to rely on your people, and so the whole thing was developing people and giving them confidence and helping them, right, as opposed to trying to make the call yourself.
Okay, let's stop here for a second and see if that generates any questions from anybody, and if it's not, I'll move on. Anybody got anything you want to ask about at this point? Yes.
Soy Aska, second year MBA. I'm from Peru. I used to work for ExxonMobil, so like a large company, and I remember when I got my first interview for the job, they evaluate potential. So they basically assess you to know how far you can get in the company. So for example, like a country lead manager or regional manager or vice president. So do you think like there is a trend in American companies trying to assess potential of people, how far can you get in the organization?
This was when you first interviewed with ExxonMobil?
Yeah, like in the first interview, and then in the first month, like they did like a profile.
I would never do something like that, because I don't see how in the world in the first time you can start making that assessment, except maybe by stereotypes and things that aren't the true human being. So we tend not to do that in DuPont and other companies I've been associated with. We do eventually, as you've got experience with people and you see what their drive and desire and really what they want to achieve starts to come out. We start giving people development and programs that kind of signal that if you keep working, you got a chance of going higher there. But I think these labels, especially early on, can be very detrimental. If you get a good label, you may think I can kind of take it easy and get there, and you won't. Or you may decide, I can't reach the ambition. And I think there's very few people that can't reach a lot of ambition if that's what they want to do.
Other questions, yeah.
Paul asked for second year MBA. As you moved into new positions as a leader, how did you go about, either informally or formally, assessing the team that you were sort of given, deciding who was a good fit for whatever your vision was for that organization, and then kind of filling it out with the skills that you needed?
You go talk to the people that do the real work, and they'll know. And they'll tell you pretty quick once you show. The people that do whatever the real work is in the organization, be it financial or whatever, and they're not putting on airs. They want to tell you what, and just go out in a very informal way and listen to them, and they will tell you about all those people pretty quick. And then that will give you a great assessment. You can do it in about 3 or 4 weeks, pretty quick, and go from there. And then I think the biggest thing is, if you think someone has a developmental need, sit down and tell them that. But tell them that because you're not in a big formal setting, but in an informal setting, because you're trying to make them win. And so I would generally assume everybody I had, they're all going to be winners. Now, how do we get there? I start with that assumption, and then you come back into a different conclusion. And I've taken groups where I had to move everybody out, and maybe in 6 months, and where you didn't have to change anybody. So I think pre-concluding, no matter what the performance of the business is, how people are doing can be a big mistake.
Could you comment just a second? You talked about, as Paul was asking, how do you make the assessment? You obviously also have to make an assessment of yourself. You have to decide, understand, first to thy own self be true. What am I really good at? What am I not so good at? And how does this team I'm working with, how do they fit with me and I with them? Did you put yourself in the middle of this equation also? And what did you find you were good at or not?
Yeah, I think you've got certain biases. And so I'm kind of a natural planner. I like to have an orderly plan of what's going on. If a crisis came up right now, my mind wants to find a solution that will keep us from sinking. Mm-hmm. And then once I find that solution, I want to constantly improve it. So I know that can drive people crazy because we had a solution, and I said, yeah, but I'm not satisfied with that. And so that will bother people tremendously because I'm never satisfied. I think we can always do it better. So I have to know that will sometimes, be a problem. So I have to back off my desire to constantly improve on that piece. I know that in making a decision, I really don't care whether it's 29.2 or 29.4. Most decisions are yes or no, we're going to do it. But when DuPont, I hired a chief operating officer who cared an awful lot about 29.2 or 20.4 because he would force me back in that direction. And so I think it's very important when you know you've got that bias, get people around you, because in that 0.2%, there might be something pretty important that I missed.
Were there others in your life that helped you do that? Maybe Ann, your wife, was she a good mentor to you, or a confidant who helped you along in your career?
She's really bad when I keep changing plans. I think what's behind your question is a family member and really knows you well. And I'm working with a bank called Bank of America, and we're trying to find a chief executive officer. And one of the questions, actually one of my colleagues with me has always asked, because when you ask somebody the same question you did about, what's your weakness, and everybody kind of dances, well, what would your wife say your weakness is, or your husband say your weakness is? Right. Boy, it comes out just like that. I think that's pretty. I think your spouse giving you feedback is important. I think it's also to your spouse or close friend or whatever it is that's really important in your life. You kind of keep them up to speed with what you're doing. I think they want to know what's happening.
Right. Some people don't share that with their spouse or other people. Is that a difficult circumstance? Do leaders need someone really close to them that can say what they really think? Did you find that problem as a leader?
I think you don't want to put too much load on your spouse with that. I don't think you want to leave too many unsolvable problems because they don't have the tools to solve it. But I do think it's important to have colleagues. So I have, in my time at DuPont, a colleague that I've known forever that maybe not be a direct report, maybe be a different spot, but I'll call them up and say, hey, I'm dealing with this. What do you think? Mm-hmm. So I think it's very important to have people that know you well, that will tell you what they really think as a part of your sounding. I'd never make a decision really critical decision, without sounding with a number of people. I found the administrative assistant in the office know me pretty well too. and when I ask them, what should we do about this, they usually would have pretty good opinions.
I think one of the difficulties for many CEOs is having their direct reports tell them what they really think. How did you overcome that problem, or did you have that problem?
I think everybody has that problem. One is about, you always want to bring good news. I know when I was at a plant in Delaware, I was a plant manager. I'd always go walk around the plant early in the morning. So I walked out one morning and there was a particular section of this machine that was on fire. It was blazing up about 3 feet. And handled it well. It was handled safely. The fire brigade got it out. It was in good shape. And so I went on my rest of the tour. Then I got to the morning meeting, which is about 9 o'clock. All the leaders come in and tell you what's going on. And the person responsible for that area said, we had a puff of smoke last night. I said, in addition to the fire, where's the puff of smoke? And, after that word got around, everybody kind of told it straight. Now, it turned out they had not exactly told him that there was a lot of blaze under that puff of smoke, you know. So I think it's important that you, number one, you won't tear somebody apart because they don't know all the details. The biggest thing is you come with a problem, and then I start peppering you with questions you don't have time to answer yet. You tend to not tell me about the problem yet. So you've got to allow the person that tells you the problem enough time to solve it. And you don't need to jump it in and take it away from them. You don't want to leave with the monkey on your back. You want to leave it with the guy who brought it in.
Questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm Kate Haffey. I'm first year MBA. I'm just wondering, you mentioned teams and developing your people. Are there 2 or 3 key differentiators that you've found that have made you truly as successful as you are? Whether it's personal characteristics or just ways in which you approach your work? Are there 2 or 3 that you could point to?
Yeah. I think you don't brag on yourself. You let other people do that if they want to. Don't care who gets the credit, because if you don't care who gets the credit, you can get a lot of things done. So I think it's a lot of those just kind of personal characteristics of where you've got to really believe the team is critical. You got to really believe that, then you got to act that way in what you're doing. And as we were talking earlier, you got to really say thank you. And you got to say thank you specifically. You know, this is exactly what you did that made a big difference. I think as much public recognition is very important. It's one thing to do it one-on-one, but if you do it in front of everybody else, that means you're going on the line and saying, I really do think that's good. And I think you can't do enough about that. And a story to make the point I was thinking, when I was in Japan, the administrative assistant I've been working with, somebody came to me and said, you know, she's really mad at you. I said, well, why is she mad? Well, because she doesn't feel good today. She has a problem, and you haven't acknowledged it. I said, well, she didn't tell me she had a problem. You should have been able to see that by her demeanor. And it was a very serious point. And then I should have. I just was not. She didn't say a word. It was nothing out of the line. But I should have been able to see that change in behavior. And I really learned from that. So I've kind of, you know, every time I see any kind of change in behavior with somebody, I'll always kind of flag it out just to make sure they're okay. And they really appreciate that.
You didn't just say I'm male. That wasn't a good defense.
She knew that.
Kind of as a follow-on question there, if you would. Did you have something else you wanted to ask? Okay.
Yeah.
As you think about that just assessment, and I'll go back to this next question real quick. You talked about, you know, I'm a planner. Where did you find that you needed some balance in life? Was that something you learned along the way, or did it appear early and you've overcome that?
Oh, like a personal balance?
Personal balance that affected workplace, work life, what you did, how you did it, how you went about it?
Well, I think you can find that most jobs I've had, and I think probably you've had too, they're so demanding. You could work 18 hours a day, and, you know, 6 or 7 days a week,
right.
And you've just got to all of a sudden call the signal, you know, you can work too much. And so I think it's very important to have other things, be it family or other interests, that balance you. And it is important to exercise. It is important to get enough sleep. Those sound kind of silly, but I find they're very, very critical.
Right. Okay. Had a question? Yes.
Hi, my name is Juan Thorn. I'm a second-year MBA. I'm from Peru as well. In my 5 years of working experience, I always identified mentors that serve for me as role models and kind of try to imitate or try to learn from their management skills. Do you think that leaders or successful leaders need to have mentors that serve as role models, or how about your experience, and make them grow as leaders and be more successful?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's very important. Every time we've started a formal process of that, it's had minimal results. So it's much better creating the environment where people are encouraged to seek out people and encouraged when they're sought out to help. But you know, every role I've ever had, I always sought people that were trying to help me. I think a lot is in your attitude. You know, if you have the right kind of attitude where it looks like you won't help, people will give it to you. If you act like you're a little bit smarter than the next guy, you know they might not give you that help. When I became CEO, I sought out 3 CEOs from outside and didn't tell anybody who they were. And I said, I'd like you to help me. And they all quickly they love to do it, and I found it extremely useful. I picked people that I thought were very good but had very different style than I did. So I didn't want somebody just to reinforce what I had, but it was very useful. And so I kept them the entire time as chief executive at DuPont.
And from those people, what kind of lessons did you learn that weren't natural to you or different to your own experience?
One in particular that he'd look at our management. I actually showed him the notes of our senior management meeting, and he would say, well, why did you do that? Why did you do this? Well, he would ask very specific questions. And not that he was talking about the business content, but he's talking about the management process, about who follows up, why did they follow up, what's the time to follow up. It helped me think, because he was not an American, and he led a company in Europe. I thought it was very, very helpful to see how a different culture looked at the same subject.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Other questions? Yes, David.
David Levy, a second-year MBA here. I think my primary question is with regard to your motivations. Would it be enough for you to say, I'm motivated by the fact that I just lead people successfully, or do you need to also feel that it's not just that I lead people successfully, it's what I'm leading them to do? Could you just be locked down in another company and lead somebody else successfully to something completely unrelated, but if you were doing it successfully, you would feel satisfaction from it?
Yeah, if I felt the values were good. Yeah, I don't think there was any. I think DuPont's a really unique company, but I think there's a lot of other very unique companies out there. I don't by any means think that's the only one. As I started to work, and why I didn't go join my friend to start is I wanted to be challenged every day. The idea of coming to work and being bored, or not being happy about the people I was working with, I wasn't going to do that. And so I kind of went in, every day with the idea of being challenged. And in fact, at one point along the way, I didn't feel very challenged. I didn't feel very good about the job that's going on. So I quit. I quit. I remember I went into my boss and said, hey, I'm going to quit. And it's okay, but I felt it wasn't him. It was the environment. He said, you can't quit. I said, yes, I can. And so he kept ignoring me. I said, well, I'm leaving tomorrow. And so we kind of worked it out. But I think that's important. To me, is not being bored and liking the people and making sure the values are. I wouldn't want to be in a place where I didn't like the values, where I feel uncomfortable about the values. But I think you can apply that. And whether you're leading a large group of people, a small group of people, individual contributor, I could be happy in all. I've had all those roles. I would just look it up, and stepping down now. It was only 4 years of my 38 that I wasn't leading a sniffing group of people. I was with the company. So it actually was leading people most of the time. But I actually, in those 4 years I wasn't, I learned a lot too. It gave me a lot of time to study and understand things. And so I think they're pretty valuable also.
So you held 15 jobs or so in 38 years at DuPont.
Yeah.
So how did you decide when it was time to leave? In any of these jobs, or when you became chair, and then you recently stepped down as chair, or in the process of doing that?
So I became CEO at 49. I remember when they were making the announcement, they kept saying, can we say 50? Because it sounded older.
Could you color your hair gray or something?
Yeah. I took care of that pretty quick. But so I really hadn't thought about, but generally, 5 to 7 years seemed like a pretty good run. And we generally changed plant manager after 7 years. So I kind of mentally said 10's got to be an absolute limit, and I went 11. Didn't quite get accomplished. But I started a dialogue with the board after about 8 years, about us getting very, very serious here and be sure we've got the candidates, and kind of revved up the process to be sure we had a very strong. We had multiple very capable people that have done the job.
So modern job, workplace, lifestyle would generally say these individuals sitting in front of us would probably change careers 4, 5, 6, maybe more times in the next 40 years that they'll be working. I know that's an exciting time, right? And so what's your advice on, how do you decide I'm not being challenged, I want something more? How do I self-judge, if I could? How did you self-judge that I want to move on? This is something different for me.
I think the first thing, if you find the role you're in is not that exciting, change the role first. Don't necessarily change the job. So I had a couple times really what was laid out as the job and what we were going to accomplish, what I ended up doing was very different. And so I would say that. I would say look around in the company you're a part of or organization you're a part of. Is there a different part of that? I wouldn't necessarily think jump to another company. Now, I'm a little biased because I stay with one company forever. But I think there's too much of a trend. I've got to jump to another company. And maybe you should, but be sure you do it for the right reasons. Right. But the idea that I'll work for 5 companies, I think, could have some fallacies to it, especially maybe in the economy we're heading into.
Right. Transition role a little bit. We talked a lot about success. We often learn a lot from our own failure, our own shortcoming, our own something didn't go exactly right. Was there a time when things didn't go right for you and you learned something from it, or can you give us an example or your philosophy in that regard?
Well, in DuPont we have a formal process for that.
For failing or for judging?
Yeah, for both. Yeah, but for judging, for judging particularly things that don't go well. Okay. And we look back to say, what did we miss? What we generally find, it's been my personal experience too, is the questions we ask ourselves before we make a decision, we generally answer them pretty good and get them right. It's the questions we forget to ask. Mm-hmm. So what we keep finding is, how do you make sure you ask the right pertinent questions, because they always keep changing. So I think. So
is that a formal process you used?
Yeah, we use it. So what we would do if we had a project to go by the Caterpillar company, I see a sign out the window that says Caterpillar.
That's right.
To tell Owens I'm not really serious, Jim Owens, I'm not serious about that. But we would always have what we called an attack team. So we get a team of about 5 or 6 people, totally unassociated with the decision, who would have 4 days of nothing but working on that to analyze the proposal, ask questions, dig in, basically attack the proposal if that was wrong. And then the senior leadership would have maybe 2 or 3 hours with the attack team, just us and the attack team, hearing their analysis, what they concluded, and then having them as a team make a recommendation, do we do it or not? And then every one of them individually giving us their view as to why they said do it or why they were in a minority and didn't vote for it. And so what we found is, although there was some, obviously, pushing back, these people don't really understand the business and so forth, but it created a much more open atmosphere of the team that was bringing the proposal about the real data. I'd say, 20% of the time the attack team said no, we didn't do it. We only once have we overruled an attack team.
Interesting. So that was part of the due diligence in a way? Is that what you'd say?
Yeah, but it was a matter of it was all around asking the right questions. Because these people coming from a different perspective would ask different questions. And a little different, because usually most projects, senior management doesn't realize it, you kind of like the project or you wouldn't be hearing about it. Right. Because if you didn't like it, it probably wouldn't be that far along. So you've got more of a bias than you think when it comes to the room.
Questions? Yes.
Laura used to be to the second year MBA. So from your experience managing and leading people, was there anything that you had to learn the hard way that you wish that someone told you or taught you?
Most of it. I talked about not being sensitive enough, listening enough. The other side of that is you do need to be decisive at times. You can listen too long, you can go for consensus too long. My bias is a little bit more toward get everybody on board and then go. I was very fortunate in 6 years in Asia. Most of my mentors while I was there were from Asian companies. And so the mentality and the way these Asian leaders coached me was very different. I was very fortunate for one period of time. The number 2 or 3 people from 9 leading Japanese companies, I won't use the names, but you could just, the brand names you know very well. We're meeting once a week, once a month for a 2.5-hour breakfast to talk about how they were going to be change agents inside their companies. And I was quite pleased they invited me to join. So I was there, they were doing it in Japanese, the guy was whispering in my ear, translating what I could follow. But I was able to kind of learn from them the issues they had and what they were trying to do. And that we went on for about 1.5 years. It was just great learning from that situation. But I saw probably a lot of my weaknesses and probably a lot of American biases from that, which kind of speeded up my learning curve.
Trip.
Trip Schubert from the second year MBA. I have a 2-part question, so I'll save it a second for follow-up. The first part really, as a leader, I imagine sort of moving up through the ranks, there probably are some risks or some chances you've taken in order to really to propel yourself. I'm curious if you can talk about some of those chances you've taken that have helped you to move forward in your career.
So I think it's a great question, because I think the way you really learn is you take on really tough projects that it's not clear you're going to win. If you're going to clear you're going to win, you're not going to learn and develop. So I remember when the Kevlar business, a product you may have heard of, there had been 4 directors of the Kevlar business. The average tenure was 14 months. They'd all failed and all gotten kicked or demoted or fired or something. And so my leader came to me and said, I want you to take Kevlar. I said, you got any other ideas? This doesn't seem like... And so, but I took it, and he said, I'll be here with you, because he's going to be my manager. I know what this is. We'll get through this thing together. 2 months later, he left. And the new guy came in and said, you got a lot of problems here in this business. And that was, and we did. We had a tremendous number of problems, about every man. But that was some of the best growing, I could have possibly done, because you had to rely on your people. You had to take risk, and you had to win. So my biggest advice would be to take on tough assignments where the outcome is not clear. And if you lose, because you won't necessarily win them all, you've learned so much you can pick up somewhere else and do fine.
And the follow-up to that is, you especially mentioned some of these leaders in the Asian countries or companies who specifically said, I want to be a change agent within my organization, which I thought was interesting. My follow-up question is, as you become a leader and you move higher up, how do you experience an internal struggle with wanting to now protect what you have built, in a way sort of taking fewer risks, even though that has helped you to get where you are? And how do you fight against those tendencies? I personally, it was kind of the other way. I never had, it's kind of like you got to be willing to sell the cows. So I was always the other way. I'd be willing to challenge what we did just last week, almost too much. So I did, but I think the tendency you say is very clear. If you don't do that, you won't survive. So you've got to be able to challenge, but you got to have people that will come out and push you on some of those things. Other people sometimes I would not see the problem as quick, and so you got to be sure you're listening. You got to provide the forums where people can bring that forward. I think it's really critical.
Other questions? Yes, Yuri.
Yuri Mentor, my first year MBA here, and my question is, generalizing, there are probably 2 ways to become a leader. One was to start as a line worker at a factory, and just work your way up and become a CEO and you know everything. And second one is you go to college, you go get your MBA, you intern at some fancy company, and then you become a CEO. So,
with maybe a little lag time in there, not much.
As minimal as possible. Would you compare the two and say which one you prefer, which one is the real one, which one?
Well, the only thing is, somewhere along the way, you need to take out time to study climate change. You fully understand?
This is reaching back to a prior conversation with Yuri, as I remember.
People got it. Shit, I don't know. We have a program where in DuPont we hire about 40 MBAs a year, kind of a marketing-focused MBA. I think that's if you come in with the right attitude and the right approach. I think having 5 years or so previous work experience and degrees at different point in time can really accelerate what you're doing very much. I don't think there's a magical answer either way. So of the 2 routes, I wouldn't say one is necessarily more successful than the other. In our company, it's generally the first route you described, starting in. But now most of our people go back and get MBAs or some advanced degree along the way. It's very much almost expected now, where when I first started out it wasn't as expected. I think again, if you come in later, you need to figure out the culture, and I think every organization does have a culture, and you got to figure out what's important in that. What are its totems? What does it hold up high? And because it's important to know that, and so you can be sure you're working within them.
Could I do maybe a follow-on question to that, and that is the value of external hires, people from the outside, not from that industry or weren't born into it, and management's view. As you sat on DuPont's management committee, as you sat in these various leaders of these various distributed businesses, Did you try purposely to go find different thinkers, different people from the outside, or was there this very intense promotion from within, and would you change that now in hindsight if it was?
Yeah, great question. What we did in DuPont is when I became CEO, we had, of our top 400, we had like 1.5% had major careers somewhere else. I didn't mean 3 or 4 years, but I mean had 15, 20 years somewhere else. And what we found is you came in with that experience, we rejected you. You know, because we all knew the system, it wasn't all written down. And so this track record was very weak on somebody coming in like that. So we decided we needed to change that, and we went out and purposely hired 15% of our top 400 from the outside. And so I would actually take them out, you know, in classes, you know, like about this size, and go out for 2 days and teach them the DuPont culture, how you're a success here. You know, to make sure they understood this is how you get along. And we don't mean to, push you out. We just can't help it. So here's how you get inside. And we still had about 50% track record on people we brought in. But I thought that was very, very important that we open up, and I think it's helped us a lot.
So if I think about MBA graduates coming from outside, they're not going to be, they're not going to have started with that company. Any specific word of advice? Is it learn the culture? Is that the primary takeaway, or would you give them something else to think about?
Find out what's really important to that organization, and you work on it. Don't work on the stuff that's not core to the organization, whatever that may be. And be sure you're constantly asking for feedback about how you're doing from everybody, mostly your peers, about how you. I mean, you experienced that in your experience here at Owen, I think, with the teamwork and so forth. You get a lot of feedback. The best thing we did in our we have an advanced management training program for people with about 15, 20 years experience. I personally would teach it. But we would do 360 feedback daily. And it just really, it's face-to-face feedback, not forums or stuff. But when you're getting 360 feedback daily in a non-structured work group, you can learn about yourself so fast that you don't have to wait for some form once a year.
Right. Other questions? Yes.
I'm a staff student. I was wondering, after your first 4 years, you didn't really have leadership, you weren't leading people directly. Do you think your leadership style has evolved over your time since then? And if so, what have been the most beneficial changes that you've made to your leadership style?
Oh, it's evolved a lot. Sometimes it's hard to see. If you're perceived as moving through the organization pretty fast, then people have put a stereotype on you. And it's usually that you're self-serving, you're out for yourself, out for the organization, so on and so forth. It may not be deserved, but I had to learn that where people were putting that so I had to do a lot to make sure that wasn't the case. In actuality, it wasn't the case, but also not to leave telltale signs that made it look like the case. I think that was extremely important. And to also realize that you really needed those different diverse opinions coming in. We've really focused on diversity in the organization in every aspect, from races to international experience to gender diversity, and it creates a very different environment. And I don't think I appreciated that all when I started, and it's pretty core of what we do today.
Okay. Time for a couple more questions, Grant.
Grant Palmer, first year MBA. In your 34 years of being a leader, what personally was your greatest leadership achievement?
Oh, my 2 sons. I mean that very seriously. I think your family and your close friends are a lot more important than your work. Don't get it out of balance, or you'll be very disappointed. So I think that's very critical. Tough question, because there's leadership achievements every day. If you're not accomplishing something every day, so I never kind of thought back about that. Toughest things were, discharging people or telling people they weren't going to achieve what they thought they should achieve. Tough decisions where anytime we had to, people would lose their jobs, we had to shut down a plant or sell a business. Very, very tough decisions. But I think very necessary decisions along the way.
Okay. Yes. One more.
As someone who's seen many freshly minted MBAs come into your company, are there any common leadership or other deficiency or potholes that you see, kind of a common pothole you see them hitting? And your advice to someone who's in that new MBA position?
These 40 MBAs that we hire, which are we think top of the top. We're very, very picky. And then they all have projects, and we have an accelerated program for their first 24 months. Then I go around and look at their project, in every one of them personally. And I was talking to this one, very intelligent, very capable guy, who was, we make Teflon, and he was working on a project to put Teflon under a lawnmower, so the grass would drop down more and not cake up around the lawnmower. You cut your own grass,
Yes, I know.
And he was explaining in great depth the marketing models he'd used and the analytics he'd done about the market and how you go to market and would you go with the big brand name people or other people. And I said, yeah, but does it work? Oh, I don't know. I think it will. Well, have you ever thought about going out and buying 2 lawnmowers and spraying one with Teflon and cut the little grass and see if it actually drops off? Oh, you couldn't do that, could you? Well, so I think the advice would be very practical. Don't push your models too hard, and use a little bit of common sense to match your. Don't lose your basic analytical training yet. That's what you came here for, but use a little common sense too along the way to balance it out. And if you're going to try that experiment, see, it didn't fall off, by the way.
It's too wet. Other questions? Yes.
James Granberry, first year MBA. Just following up on, you talked about family a little bit. Is it really possible to be, the success level that we're talking about and also balance the family? And are there some tricks or tips or things that you did along the way that helped you with that balance?
Besides have a great wife, you mean, is understandable.
Yeah, and of course, Ellen Kuhlman, that took my place at DuPont, she gets that question a lot, and I get that question a lot about her, only twice this morning, But, absolutely, absolutely. But you need to be organized about it. You need to decide what your priorities are. What we really encourage people is when they're going to, let's say a senior leader is going to go out to be at that soccer match this afternoon, say so. I'm going to be at the soccer match because that's very important. And you can evaluate whether I get my work done or not. Don't kind of sneak out early or say I've got something to do with it. I mean, be very open about balancing that. That's very critical. And there are different stages in your life where you may spend more time with your family. It's very critical. We've got a thing in DuPont where we once a year have awards for supervisors who have gone out of the way to create a work environment that was very unique for that situation. So. And only your employees can nominate you for it. And I go to them every year and hear them. We pick the top 15 and talk about it. But if somebody's had a sick parent, and we got these rules about how much time you can get off, but this work group said you need to go be with your sick parent for a month because they live in state X, and we're going to cover for you, and you're going to get paid because we're going to get all the work done, and we give that supervisor award. It might be against every NLRB kind of rule in the book, but that's the kind of atmosphere we want to set. And so I think it's very important that you set that kind of atmosphere for everybody. Because everybody's got strains. I think that it's really, what hits me when I look at some people that are in administrative kind of roles in the company, they got 3 kids and one's got a sick this and that. They got the same strains everybody else does. And so to think the senior people have that many more strains than everybody else does in life, I think is probably not right. So you can't set yourself up differently. I do think involving your family in the good things is important. I think they are missing some time with you, and so I think to be able to make sure that they can feel like some part of the success is good too.
I want to close out with some short questions and answers if I could, and I'll try to make the questions short if you'll try to make the answers short. So we'll do that, and realize that we could spend the afternoon here, but I really appreciate the time.
You want me to be short? Is that what you're saying, Jim?
No, I'm saying I do appreciate we could go on for a while. Who taught you the most?
My dad.
If you look at a book, you read a lot. We talk about that. Your favorite book that taught you about leadership or taught you some essential lesson about leadership?
Well, I really couldn't say one. The Bible's not bad.
Least favorite buzzword in business?
Oh, shoot, there's so many. I think, let me answer it this way. Americans are terrible about creating words. And when I was living in Japan, I would come back, and you guys had created another new word. What does that mean? And you can't understand why we can't understand. So I think the biggest thing is green shoots. What is that? I mean, all of a sudden, everybody talks about green shoots, and I bet we'd all have different definition of it. Biggest thing.
Biggest, one time in your life, boss, biggest complaint about you, somebody that complained. What did they complain about?
Oh, shoot, I should have looked at your list of questions. Probably not taking somebody, it was not taking somebody out of a job quick enough.
And spouse's biggest complaint?
Don't listen.
I think that's every spouse's biggest complaint anyway, I'm not sure. What are you passionate about?
I'm really passionate about people and giving people a chance to grow. I mean, that's what I get excited about when I see people grow and really develop and feel good about what they're doing. That's more important than necessarily hitting the earnings this quarter. You better do that too. You won't have a chance to do the other one, but I think that's what's important.
We're in a really unusual economic and world environment now. Maybe different than ever before. Lots of writing in this area. Piece of advice for these Owen students about going into this new and different world. What would you suggest they focus on most?
Well, don't forget the fundamentals. The fundamentals of whatever organization has to be improving productivity, has to focus on their customers, has to focus on their people. Those have not changed. I do think the markets and the opportunities will be different in the next 10 years than they have in the past 10 years. So take a little time and use good common sense. I'm working with this bank now, and they've got so many people, so many smart people, but sometimes they don't look at common sense things that are going on around them because they're so caught up in their own world. So get outside, read a little bit from outside your normal bailiwick. Don't read just the business pages, read other parts of the stuff.
Would you please join me in thanking Chad for this afternoon?